In today's final thoughts video for Game Week 9, we're first going to discuss some differential picks, then moving on to some Arsenal and City quotes to consider, and then we're going to have a discussion about the premiums in the game right now, and finally moving to a last segment where I'm going to discuss my team and how I plan to move forward in FPL. So let's jump in to another Fantasy Premier League video. First off, starting on my differential picks for this week and weeks to come in FPL. Of course, I cannot include absolutely everyone I love under 10% ownership, and with these players there are some caveats, there are some pros and cons, so make sure you listen to the entire section of the video to get an understanding of my opinion on these players. We're first off going to start off with Raul Jimenez though. Just going to bring up this screen on the FPL website here to show you obviously how well he's been doing recently. Goal, assist, goal in the sort of last 5 to 6 games. The fixtures for me are quite nice. You come up to a sort of bad block around game week 15 where you face Arsenal, then Liverpool, but straight after you do have in 17 Southampton, so perhaps a long hold up until 17, or you could look to jump off as early as sort of 12 or 13/14. So for me, low ownership, low price, on good form, good fixtures. He's definitely someone, you know, to be considering coming up for the next few weeks in FPL, in my opinion. Similar sort of vein of player here. A little bit less ownership in terms of Matheus Cunha, 6.5 million, 2.6% ownership. Actually, in terms of form, not great. Obviously, Wolves have probably had the hardest fixture run to start the season. With fixtures coming up, though, because they've had the hardest fixture run at the start of the season, they're now on to some pretty nice fixtures for a very good stretch of games. And look, you're going all the way to around 18 here from game week 9. You're going to get a lot of usability from Matheus Cunha, in my opinion. So I think he's a great sort of consideration. Maybe after game week 9, when we go to game week 10 and 11, I think he's going to be a popular transfer in around game week 11 anyway, with that Southampton at home fixture. But yeah, Matheus Cunha, good pick in my opinion. We're going to move up to, again, another forward. There's sort of 3 forwards on this list, which kind of proves my point I made earlier in the week, which cheap forwards are the meta in FPL right now. Johan Wissa. I mean, why I advise you to listen to the entire section of this video is because I maybe don't advise to buy him this week in particular. It could be sort of next week when we see this week's sort of minutes. Because, of course, he just came back from injury, played 24 minutes last week. Amazing. If he plays and starts against Ipswich and gets good minutes, I think he's a great option. And perhaps if you are a risky manager, you could bring him in this week for the home fixture with Ipswich, because, of course, it is just a good fixture. But, look, 24 minutes last week isn't great. But Ipswich, 90 minutes potentially. You're looking at a great player. Of course, a cheap player as well, who will play in an attacking side. So there is a little bit of a caveat with Wissa there, but for me, I think he's still, after owning Wissa in the past, I think he's still a real great asset in terms of FPL, even though he's not on penalties for Brentford. And another Brentford player who was in my list last week, I do believe, for differential picks, and he did score last week, so, you know, I'll take that as a sort of a good sign for Ethan Pinnock. You know, 2 goals and 2. Again, good fixtures, 0.8 ownership, 4.5 million, cheap defender, good fixtures, low ownership. I think, you know, players like this, getting them in your teams when it's right to, is always great. So, you know, someone to consider, Ethan Pinnock, especially with that goal threat he's shown recently. I don't think, you know, that goal threat will keep up. Maybe it'll stop and dry up this week, and sort of we'll see later on in the season maybe a few more goals from Pinnock. But who knows? Who knows? It could score yet again against Ipswich at home. Another one which I was kind of hesitant to put in, but it kind of makes sense to me. Garnacho here for 6.2 million, 8.1% ownership. Of course, it went up overnight there at 8.2 ownership there. I did make these graphics last night, but a 10-pointer against Brentford, 90 minutes, 90 minutes, 90 minutes, 90 minutes. That's what we like to see, 90-minute men. And the fixtures as well aren't too bad. I actually quite like the fixtures. West Ham, of course, have shown us that they can just switch off at times. Kudus is out with that red card, I do believe. Look, they don't look a great side, West Ham. And then you're facing Leicester, Ipswich, Everton straight after that. The main thing is, look, he's getting 90 minutes. If he gets the service, if Man United really go for this and sort of try, rejuvenate their season almost, because it's not been the most impressive season so far for United. I seem, it's been like that for a few seasons now, but yeah, I think Garnacho is an okay pick to consider. I'm not too sure I would be personally looking at it, because I do think when United do well, do they score loads of goals? Not particularly, but maybe we see that in the West Ham fixture. So Garnacho, perhaps someone to consider for your FPL teams. Another player here, of course, that I think was on the list again last week, and of course had a really fantastic week. Got the assist taken off him, which people may say shouldn't have happened, but at the end of the day, the goalkeeper saved it. It's when the defender bounced off and it went in. It's not his assist. However, he did score a goal in that fixture. 8 points last week. Came off in the 69th minute. I did see something referring to Heung-min Son perhaps missing the midweek fixture because of sort of maybe a hamstring injury, if I'm correct in saying. However, I do think that's a good sign for the weekend rather than a bad sign. It shows that he's getting rested. It shows that he's valuable for the weekend. And for me, he's possibly someone I could be looking at to get in my squad. It's sort of between him and Palmer at the moment. Palmer did rise in price last night, and I'll discuss that in my team section at the end of the video, kind of my thoughts about that move. But for Heung-min Son, sort of the fixtures coming up, they're not as great as the other players on this list, but you're talking about Heung-min Son here. We're talking about a premium player. Of course, 9.9 million isn't cheap, but sort of when you look at the 7.3 ownership, you're like, this could be a great time to sort of make use of the low ownership of Heung-min Son. You've got Palace, which I think will be a slightly harder game. Villa, it's going to be a fiery game. I'm not sure if it was last season or the season before, sort of an injury happened and there's sort of a clash of players. So now that's always an interesting game. Ipswich in 11, Manchester City in 12, Fulham in 13. And of course, going all the way down to 16 here, you've got Southampton, but I'm not too sure you'd hold Heung-min Son for that long. Perhaps you look to hold him for the next 3 weeks and then move off in game week 12 when we get those fixture swings coming up. But those are my differential picks for this week and up-and-coming weeks in FPL. We're going to have a look at some City quotes now that I think are quite useful. And of course, we can use last night's Champions League minutes as an indication to sort of what this means going forward for City. Kyle Walker, a knee issue has popped up. For me, that increases Rico Lewis's minutes, so that's good for me as an owner and you as owners at home. But does that mean we should go out and buy Rico Lewis? Potentially. I think it's a potential move there to go to Rico Lewis, especially with the news sort of that Walker is out and was out for the Champions League fixture. Guardiola, basically the quote has mentioned that he can't play all these games. Ake could come in very soon, in my opinion. But for me, Guardiola missing out on the Champions League that he did last night is a positive sign for Guardiola owners as well. You're probably looking at a back line with Rico Lewis right back, Guardiola left back. It seems to work pretty well, and I think that's what will happen going forward for the next few fixtures at least. De Bruyne, still out, and I don't know when he will be back, to be honest. It's kind of not a lot of information out there in terms of what's going on with De Bruyne right now. Perhaps in a few weeks we see him back, maybe a bit longer, but yeah, it's just a bit of a peculiar one with De Bruyne at the moment. I'm not too sure what is going to happen with him and when he's coming back. But for now, we can sort of focus on the other assets of City, like Phil Foden. He feels much better. The minutes he played in the last game, for example, Phil, you realise immediately when he is happy and fit and mentally in the right moment. You realise immediately he is getting better and better. And I think that's a good sign for Phil Foden. Of course, played 90 minutes last night in the Champions League. He plays on Saturday, so he's going to have Thursday, Friday, and then he plays Saturday. So perhaps a bench is in order for Phil Foden, or perhaps a early sub if he does start. So if you own Phil Foden, maybe this is bad news, maybe this is good news. I can't quite put my finger on it, and it's difficult to kind of guess what Pep's going to come out with in terms of a lineup, but that is sort of the City quotes we've had very recently. Moving on now to the Arsenal quotes, and the main thing I kind of want to talk about here is the Arsenal defence and Bukayo Saka. If you'd like to pause the video and read some of these quotes yourself, you're more than welcome to, but Bukayo Saka, the immediate quote I want to speak about is the availability to play against Liverpool. I know a lot of people have sold Saka, but if you haven't yet, just like myself, this quote is for you. I don't know, he wasn't able to train yet, so that's unlikely, so it's sort of unlikely that we'll see him against Liverpool, but Arteta is just a liar. We've noticed that in sort of the positive comments he made about Saka last week. Of course, he just wasn't in the squad at all. Maybe this sort of negative quote is a positive, and he does play against Liverpool. Arteta is just frustrating with this kind of thing, and I think if you own Saka, he's probably just a sell anyway with the up-and-coming fixtures. So, like for myself, I'm probably going to sell him on the deadline stream tomorrow. The other sort of topic I want to bring up is sort of the frailty of the Arsenal defence coming up. Perhaps we see a backline of players that not necessarily are getting loads of minutes and perhaps aren't accustomed necessarily to a lot of Premier League minutes coming up. So maybe later on in this Arsenal fixture we kind of see Liverpool take over, but I expect sort of clean sheets to be not even possible in this fixture. I think both teams can score. Whether it's going to be a high-scoring game is another question. I think maybe for Liverpool, but for Arsenal perhaps not. I think set pieces are going to be key for Arsenal in this fixture, though. And if you own Gabriel, it is something to consider that he could, be up there for corners and attempting to sort of scrape a goal that way rather than from open play. But yeah, a few issues with Arsenal here. But we'll move forward into the next section now. Moving on now to the premiums in the game. I'm going to give you my opinion on all of them on this list here. Saka and De Bruyne starting off. I'm not going to necessarily spend too much time on these players talking about them because they're just not options for this week, and perhaps we need a lot more information on those to even consider them. Son, I think short term for the next 3 weeks is a good option. If you want to hold them slightly longer, it's sort of around game week 14, I'd look to jump off Son. Palmer, on the other hand, I think is a player you can hold for an extremely long term, regardless of fixtures. I think he can kind of perform in any fixture almost. Newcastle at home is a nice fixture this week, of course. If you maybe don't even own Erling Haaland for his amazing fixture, Cole Palmer, Newcastle at home, I think is a great captaincy option. Mohamed Salah this week, of course, not a great fixture with Arsenal away, but all things considered in terms of that Saliba red card and the frailty of the Arsenal defence, potentially something that is really differential. You could captain Mo Salah. I personally wouldn't take the risk because Arsenal will probably sit in really defensive for that game. But yeah, something to maybe consider. And of course, Game Week 12 coming up with that Southampton away fixture is really nice. And this week, of course, Erling Haaland has Southampton at home, probably the best captaincy option this game week. And for me, Haaland is someone I'm maybe looking to jump off of around Game Week 12 or 13. Sort of depends how I feel about FPL at the time, but yeah, something to consider coming up with the premiums in the game in FPL right now. Right, I'm going to discuss now my team for Game Week 9. This is the last discussion about my team. You'll see, of course, the deadline stream tomorrow. You will be invited to join that and sort of discuss your team and my team with me before the FPL deadline, because of course we might get some early news. I highly doubt it though, because it's a Friday deadline. The move was planned to go from Saka to Palmer. I let Palmer increase in price last night, and for this reason alone. And listen carefully when I say this, because yes, I think Palmer is a great option, especially as a long-term hold. However, for the next 3 game weeks, Do I really think Palmer can outscore Heung-min Son? Heung-min Son is the other player I am considering bringing into my squad for the next 3 weeks and the next 3 weeks alone. Palmer has, of course, Newcastle, great fixture. He then moves on to Man United away, then Arsenal at home. We could see Saliba, obviously we should see Saliba back around that at game week 11 time. So, you know, Chelsea are going to have a harder time to break down Arsenal in that at game week 11 fixture. When we look at the other option of Heung-min Son, Crystal Palace away, Villa at home, Ipswich at home. The fixtures do just sound better for Heung-min Son, and of course, the only thing that I need to consider with this move is Heung-min Son's minutes, because of course he just came back, and we've seen he had reduced minutes in the last fixture. We also see him, you know, play amazingly. He hit the post, I believe, twice. He had the assist taken off him. He could have came away with a much bigger haul, is my point here. And yes, I already own Brennan Johnson, but perhaps a double up of Spurs attack isn't too bad, because we've seen how attacking they can be. Again, I just wouldn't be looking at a Spurs defence, because, you know, as bad as they are defensively, I think they're one of the best attacking teams in the league at times. And the question is, can Son outscore Palmer in the next 3 weeks? I think he possibly can, so I could be moving from Saka to Son this week. I know a lot of people did that last week and reaped the rewards, of course. The assist was taken off him, he only got 8 points. However, still, I think for the next 3 weeks, it is something to consider for myself. If I do want to move to Palmer, you know, I'm not too bothered about it, because I think long term it does net me some great points. And of course, I will own Palmer then for game week 12 and the game week 14 fixture. I will be trying to own him around that point anyway. However, yeah, I just do like the looks of Palmer in my squad long term. If I want to chase a bit of upside, I think I will move to Heung-min Son. But yeah, for now, this is how sort of the team is looking going into game week 9. As always, to outro every video, I like to give you guys at home a big thank you for supporting the FPL Mugs YouTube channel. If you have enjoyed today's video and you aren't yet subscribed, please do consider it. You're going to get weekly FPL content from myself and deadline streams. But that is everything for today's video. Thank you so much again for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye for now.